A very good afternoon and warm welcome to you all to the second talk of this webinar series, which is being organized by the Center for Consciousness Studies, Department of Neurophysiology in NIMHANS, as a part of the International Yoga Day 2022. I am Professor Bindu Gutti, Professor of Neurophysiology and the Dean Basic Sciences. So today we have a very eminent personality, Professor B. Mahadevan from IIM Bangalore. Professor Mahadevan is a very, besides being an eminent management professional, he is also a Sanskrit scholar, and he believes firmly the importance of embedding this ancient Indian wisdom in our day-to-day life and work, and to see the betterment of our outcome of our life as well as the workout outcome. So it gives me great pleasure, sir, to welcome you all, to the webinar, to the talk on yoga and spirituality, a path for reflection of self-evolution and growth. And before you deliver the talk, I request Dr. Arun to introduce the speaker to the audience. So thank you, sir. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation, and we are looking forward to listen to you. Thank you, sir. Over to Arun.
Namaskaram. Let me introduce this eminent person. Professor Mahadevan is a professor of operation management at Indian Institute of Management, Bangalore, where he has been teaching since 1992. He is also founding vice chancellor of Chinmaya Vishwa Vidyapeeth, a university for Sanskrit and Indic knowledge. And there he's responsible for creating new generation of academic programs with respect to higher education space, blending both ancient Indian knowledge traditions and contemporary knowledge systems. He's also Dean Administration of IIM Bangalore and a member of governing body of this for the last 4 or more years. Professor Mahadevan has been in the board of IIM and IIT Madras and many other institutes. He's also in the International Advisory Board for California Management Review. And earlier he was in the board of Indian Oil Corporation. He is primarily from an MTech and PhD background in Industrial Engineering and Management Division from IIT Madras. And he also earlier he had held bachelor's degree in Engineering in Production Engineering from Madras. He has more than 30 years of wide range experience, both in teaching, research, consulting in industry, as well as academic administration, and has been involved in other prominent institutes like IIT Delhi. He's also into the editorship of IIM Bangalore Management Review, and also earlier a chair professor for sourcing and supply management in the IIM Bangalore. He also has some he has also been a visiting scholar in New Hampshire, and he has retained a consultant position in Deloitte Consulting, a prominent consultancy company. And he has been trustees of several NGOs in several industrial advisory boards, and he has years of teaching and research experience. And recognizing his excellence in both these fields, he has received several nominal awards and been nominated globally for Economic Intelligence Unit's Business Professor Year Award in 2012. And he has authored many publications, and he has one of the best-selling books on operation management theory and practice. He has been playing significant role in the field of Sanskrit and Sanskriti for the last 20 years, helping in the vision building, helping in government policy decision making, disseminating this in global audience, and in many speaking assignments across India. So it's my pleasure to welcome you, sir. Please enlighten us with your talks. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope I'm audible. Everything is fine. Yes. So, first of all, thank you, Professor Bindu Gutti. Thank you, Dr. Nagendra, for inviting me on this occasion of International Yoga Day. It looks like you have put together a very beautiful lineup of nice speakers. I am happy to be part of it. Thank you for this opportunity. I had a bit of a conversation with Dr. Nagendra before I sort of agreed to give a talk today. And amongst other things, I decided I'll speak out of my experience of my personal journey than talking some theory of yoga. I don't want to carry coal to Newcastle, and you may be more than informed in terms of many of these things being in the center of consciousness studies and so on. So therefore, I would confine myself to my own personal reflections and the experience and the journey that every one of us anyway, we keep having, and then it's a long journey in which we are all. Of course, yoga has become extremely popular thanks to the efforts by our Honorable Prime Minister in recent years. For the last 5 years, I think yoga has captured the imagination of not just the Indians but also the international community. And if I have to use Rajiv Malhotra's words, I think the international community is digesting yoga now. It's trying to make its own sense of what yoga is and bring it out in its own ways. Those are some of the attendant challenges which we'll have to face. But the fact remains that people have taken to yoga quite seriously. And it is in this context we may have to talk about yoga. And particularly, I chose to sort of talk about yoga and spirituality for the simple reason that, which I think will become evident as we're talking about. So what I propose to do is to look at yoga from 6 different dimensions. And I think if you can.
Yes, sir, you can continue, sir.
Yeah, please, if you can mute the others, it may be useful actually. Yeah. Okay, thank you. So, so I'm going to look at yoga purely out of my own journey in this whole highway called yoga. And as I was reflecting through it, and I was thinking through it and so on and so forth, finally, I sort of came to 6 dimensions in which one can actually understand one's own journey. I'm sure it is my journey, and I'm sure many of you might possibly also, align to it, think very similarly, and so on. So the first and the obvious understanding of the word yoga, and the first and the obvious entry into yoga, if somebody has to really step into yoga, I think happens very easily, very naturally also in some sense, to look at yoga as a means for physical fitness. This is where the whole thing starts. Increasingly, we are also becoming a little more health conscious. So it has become a practice. Many have taken to it. And it's not surprising. That's an easy entry point into yoga. Generally, people, take probably an hour, hour and a half at a time convenient, quite often early in the morning. And then we say, I am now practicing yoga. Okay. And if you look at it, there are so many dimensions to it. So many terminologies are there. There are people who talk about power yoga, and there are things like prenatal yoga. I'm sure, if you get into institutes like yours, there are very specific regimens available for certain kind of things. There are things like aerial yoga, acrobic yoga. So there are many such ways by which people try to understand yoga as a starter. And as I told, it is primarily a mechanism by which people think. that yoga is a means to improve the physical fitness, especially today when you have hypertension and diabetes and those kinds of challenges, chronic diseases that we seem to be having. Yoga seems to be a very nice mechanism to sort of make sure that we live healthily from a physical body sense. So, I've come across many definitions of this perspective of yoga. There is one definition which captured my imagination because in a way it summarizes how people understand yoga and how many people understand yoga when we say yoga. So the definition goes like this: it is a place of discovery and connection with your own body that encompasses balance, proper stretching techniques, breathing, meditation, centering the mind and spirit. That's yoga in its real form. So for many of us, this could be a way we might start our understanding and journey in yoga. We think, well, here is a nice methodology our ancestors have given to us, which will help us lead a healthy life, the fitness of the body. So when we look at yoga like this, there are things. For example, there is a whole ecosystem that comes in front of us. You have a certain way of dressing for the yoga. You have some yoga suits, you have yoga mats. There are some gadgets. I have seen people doing Jalaniti. There are people who put insert tubes into their nostril and then get it through the other nostril, clean the nasal passage and so on. There are people who consume 20 feet of cloth into their intestine, wipe the whole intestine, take the oil out. So there are many versions of this, which are all, in a way understood as yoga by a lot of people. There's nothing wrong about it. All that I'm saying is when you say yoga and I am into yoga, this seems to be one conspicuous dimension, and I'm sure many of us would have started our journey using this as the initial point in which we'll hold on to our understanding of what yoga and so on. So this is the first dimension of yoga, which, as I told, makes one believe that yoga is to lead a very healthy physical life. Asanas are very important part of it. You can keep your body very flexible. You can stretch very well. You can keep your limbs very nimble and all these kinds of things. Now, the second dimension of yoga. So even if we start like this, what would happen is it is inevitable that very quickly we raise the bar even in this dimension. And what does it mean? And again, I'm increasingly seeing this. Yoga, the second dimension that I have understood yoga is a way to lead a better working life, professional life. Because there are a lot of research which I have also been reading and I've been sometimes sharing and so on. Workers world over complain what is called deprived meaning at workplace. Somehow they are not able to make much meaning in the workplace. I mean, this is not just true of multinational workers. It may be true of a health worker. It may be true of a priest in a temple. It can be anywhere. There is a deprived meaning in workplace, and what it essentially means is, since human beings essentially are meaning-making entities, we are organic entities who inherently go after making meaning. This introduces a lot of stress. So you have job stress. People are not able to cope up with the job stress, and so it turns into burnout. So the mental issues you have get into, not only stress, it gets into the health. Eventually, it gets us into a health problem of diabetes, hypertension, all these chronic diseases, and so on. So, when we look at yoga from another dimension, which many of us also do out of compulsion, that it is our health practitioner, our health advisor who says, change your way of life, change your lifestyle, And for many people in their journey to change their lifestyle, yoga seems to come as a very handy tool. So this is what is the second version of the first dimension which I am talking about. In fact, I myself has done some studies in SVSA, along with through some PhD students who have been guiding, where one can very systematically set up experimental mechanisms. One can have a control group and a yoga group, do some interventions, take some specific measurements. All these are possible, out of which we also understand that yoga can play a role in helping individuals being very productive in their professional life, in their personal life, because they can become a little more healthy. So what started as physical fitness, as a rudimentary idea of understanding of yoga, for some of us, that idea gets a little more developed. And we begin to think that yoga is a mechanism by which perhaps we can have a better professional life. So this is the second interesting dimension. So, but what you see in these two dimensions is that there is still this overwhelming understanding that yoga has something to do with our physical fitness and health. The only difference is, from a pure physical fitness, there is a bit of an understanding of mental health. So where yoga can play a role. So there is no harm. I think it's a certain kind of a progress in our understanding of what is called yoga and how we understand yoga and so on and so forth. Now, if somebody develops this understanding and also have a little bit of an experience of practicing this, understanding the nuances of yoga purely from this perspective, it is inevitable. It's just a matter of time. It is inevitable that our journey in yoga, our understanding of what yoga is and what it means to us, would now graduate into another level. So let me bring the third dimension of yoga. To me, the third dimension of yoga, which we can experience, is yoga as a means for mind management. In fact, Manusmriti, it so beautifully says, Manayeva Manushyanam Karanam Baddha Mokshayoho. Bhagavad Gita also says, Uddhare Atmana Atmanam, Na Atmanam Avasadayet, Atmaiva Bandhuhu Atmanam, Atmaiva Ripuratmanah. Slowly, this thinking happens that we all play a mind game at the end of the day. It's a higher level of understanding of our own life. It's a slightly better understanding of our journey called life. I think we will eventually get there. It's just a matter of time. So when we step into that understanding that mind can be a friend or mind can be a foe, Atmaiva Bandhuhu Atmanam, Atmaiva Ripuhu Atmanah. So slowly we try to understand that it seems we can make choice. It seems we can take things in our hands and take a few kind of conscious steps in our own personal life and in our personal life, the way we deal with ourselves, the way we deal with others and so on. So, which can make a little difference to us. So the next journey in yoga, the next improvement or the evolution in the journey of yoga, if you were to ask me, is to understand that we have to get to the first sutra of Yoga Sutra. The first sutra in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, Yoga hai chitta vritti nirodha. I think that thought slowly comes. The mind chatter, the ramblings of the mind is where many of our issues in life seem to play out, and the mind game gets complicated. So the chitta vritti nirodha, the whole idea of how do you taper this stream of thought process, a normal mind, an untrained normal mind can have, I do not know, since you are in the Department of Conscious Studies, you may have very specific data on that. Maybe 100 thoughts a second. An agitated mind may have some 300 thought waves going one after the other in the mind. It can be a very agitated mind. So this thinking takes us to the third dimension of yoga. where knowingly or unknowingly, we don't need any of these jargons actually, but it is a very intuitive exercise that we begin to understand one of the reasons why we need yoga is to somehow get what is called this chitta ekagrata. Can we have a single pointed focus of our mind? That seems to be a very important step. That seems to be a very interesting journey that an individual can go through. And moment we step into this, then there is a marked change that happens in our understanding of yoga. There's a marked difference that happens in terms of how do we approach yoga as a tool. This is a very significant departure in this journey that I think many of us will go through. There may be a context when it can happen, but we will definitely go through. That yoga can be a mechanism by which one can aspire and travel in a path of chitta ekagrata. Is there a way we can get a single pointed focus of the mind in whatever we choose to do? Looks like we understand that's what makes us a very satisfied individual at the end of the day. So this is where I think if I can little bit step into chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, where all these rudimentary ideas, chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita is such a wonderful piece of source of support for somebody who wants to step into this journey. Krishna in Bhagavad Gita is not giving very fancy and complicated steps of how do you do, get into yoga. And I keep saying this often. If somebody wants to go to reach scale Mount Everest, nobody bothers about Mount Everest at all. A serious person does not bother about the Mount Everest. The serious person talks about the first base camp. Where is the first base camp? What is the mechanism to reach the first base camp? Then from the first base camp, one can go to the second base camp. Maybe the 11th base camp will take us to Mount Everest. In the same way, I think we have wonderful help in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita, where Sri Krishna has so beautifully given us the first base camp in our journey in this dimension of yoga. Can I take charge of my mind? Is there a way I can befriend my quote friendship with my mind? So, he says, Yogi Yunjita Satatam, Atmanam Rahasi. There are a few nice things he talks about. First thing he talks about is learn to be alone. What do you mean by alone is there a way you can, sit for about, let's say, half an hour, 45 minutes, maybe close our eyes and try that. In fact, many students ask me sometimes, I tell them, just go, sir. They ask me, sir, how do I go about in this yoga? I say, don't do too many things. I ask them, what time do you get up? 5 or 6 o'clock. Can you get up at 5:30? Can you give half an hour to you additionally, only for you? Yes, sir, I can. So why don't you get up at 5:30 instead of 6 o'clock? That means you have 30 more minutes in your hand. Can you just find a very nice place? It can be even in your bedroom, it can be in your hall, it can be in your puja room, it doesn't really matter. Can you sit for half an hour? Then they ask me, sir, what do I do sitting for half an hour? Because they think this is one of the most foolish suggestions that one can give. So I tell them, just sit for half an hour. Come after 6 months, let us have a discussion. And I must tell you, many of them never came back. Not because they did not, I'm serious people I'm talking. They never came back because they found where to go after that. So Sri Krishna talks about it. Yogi injita satatam atmanam rahasistita. Keep yourself a little secluded. Then he says, ekaki yatachittatma nirashir aparigraha. Try to be alone. When you say try to be alone, the first step is trying to be physically alone. But it is not physical aloneness. You can be in the thick of the forest where nobody is there, but your thoughts can be as though you are in the middle of a traffic jam in Bangalore. So it is also being alone with your mind. So that's a process. That's why I keep telling my students, sit for half an hour for about 6 months. Just do that. Let's talk about what will happen after that. And quite often they have said, we have understood what to do now. Because that sitting alone and finding time for ourselves is a very useful baby step in this journey of yoga. Then he says, Shuchau deshe pratishtaya sthiramasanam atmanah. So, find a nice, comfortable place to sit. Then he says, close your eyes. He says, nasikagram. You focus on the tip of the nose. Then he says, swam, your own nose, not somebody else's nose. So all these very small, little, beautiful instructions are available in chapter 6 of Bhagavad Gita. And quite often what I find is people who set on this journey of trying to gather oneself. It's all about gathering oneself. We are too busy with the outside world. We are too busy with so many things. Bhartrihari said beautifully in one of his shlokas, he said, Adityaihi gataraharaha samkshiyate jivitam. Every day the sun rises and, we lose one day in our life. The life is like water leaking out of a pot with a hole. So Adityaihi gataraharaha samkshiyate jivitam. Vyaparehi bahukarya gurubihi kalopi najnayate. We are so busy. We are so busy with so many things. I mean, there are many useful things. I'm not saying there are useless things. All that I'm saying is we are so busy with so many things outside the world. In this journey of yoga, for the first time, we try to understand we have to find time for ourselves. So when you say you sit alone, when you say you close your eyes and then gather your mind, what are we saying? Can you find time for yourself? Every one of us have a unique space. Every one of us have a unique space which cannot be captured, cannot be trespassed, cannot be taken away by anyone other than that individual. So we are talking about that space. So this is this third dimension that I am talking about. This is the third dimension of yoga, where an individual gathers himself or herself. And quite often what I find is such people who get a little serious here, they also get a lot of help by being a little more religious. They're able to do upasana, they are able to do some japa. All these weave into it. So sometimes some of these religious practices also help us to gather ourselves, help ourselves to focus on ourselves. So I think this is a very interesting journey. And if you ask me what happens in this third dimension of yoga, for the first time ever in our own life, we would have knowingly, unknowingly, unwittingly, that doesn't matter. We would have developed an ability to understand the existence of a world inside, distinctively different from the world outside. In fact, our scriptures talk a lot about this. In fact, in Kathopanishad, there is such a beautiful shloka which says that God has been so cruel. He has designed all these pancha indriyas, turning them looking, outside. He says, therefore, we all the time we seem to be, looking outside. He says, avrita chakshuhu amritatvam icchan. So a person who wants to reach the ultimate stage of his evolution wants to turn inside. So scriptures also talk about this. It says there is a value in gathering the energy and focusing it into the world inside. We are too busy focusing on the world outside. So this is the first important change that every one of us will experience when we step onto this dimension of yoga as a mind management tool. So therefore, we'll begin to sense the world inside. We begin to be part of it, own it, and start observing it. So all these will happen, and it does a very beautiful behavioral change in us over a period of time we may notice. And that is best described by this shloka from Gita, Yuktahara viharasya, Yukta karmasya cheshtashu, Yukta swapna avabodhasya yogo bhavati dukkha. There is a certain moderation in life. The life is not swinging the pendulum to the extremes. In Buddhist terms, they call it as the middle path. It is like saying you cannot have a veena, and this veena, the strings, if they are too tight, moment you go and then start playing the veena, the strings will break if it is too tight. On the other hand, if the strings are too loose, you don't get any nice swara out of the veena. So it's all about, that's why the artists, stringed artists, they do those minor adjustments so that they get the best music out of it. So this body instrument needs to be neither too tight, not to be too loose. That's what this shloka is saying. Yukta ahara viharasya, yukta karmasya cheshtashu, yukta swapna avabodhasya. You don't eat too much, you don't starve too much. You don't sleep too much, you don't wake up too much. There is moderation in life. This is the biggest departure in our personal journey, I believe. So this third dimension of yoga brings that interesting twist into our understanding of not just yoga. It also brings a twist into our own journey. There is a bit of a moderation in life. There's a bit of rhythm that we find for ourselves in what we do in our life and so on. So this is the third dimension of yoga that I can think of. Now, there is a very natural fallout of this. If somebody really practices this, somebody understands what is called yukta ahara viharasya, yukta karmasya cheshtashu and all that, then there is a fourth dimension of yoga which beautifully unfolds in my personal opinion. And that is, yoga is a mechanism to handle the world of action. This is the biggest, greatest improvement that one can aspire to have. In fact, this is so beautifully again explained in Bhagavad Gita. That's why every chapter of Bhagavad Gita is called yoga. Every chapter is titled Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Sankhya Yoga, Karma Yoga, Jnana Karma Sannyasa Yoga, Karma Sannyasa Yoga, and things like that. Every chapter is called a yoga. Why? Because if you look at the key theme of Bhagavad Gita, there are a few things I want to say. Bhagavad Gita is a text which very unambiguously establishes that everybody must be part of the society and do work. That's why I like Bhagavad Gita a lot. It's a text which emphasizes that karmanyeva adhikaraha ma paleshu kadachana ma karma palahetur bohu mate sangastu akarmani. It says everybody have to be part of the society. Everybody have to take part in. We are all ordained to do things. Every one of us have a role to play as a member of a society, as a member of a family, as a member of an organization in which we are working. Therefore, I think the question that naturally we all face is, how do we handle this? Because for many of us, we go in the morning having such a dream of doing so many things in the office or in our workplace. We come back with a lot of the work that seems to affect us a lot. It puts so much of strain in us, sometimes challenging our own, ways of doing things. It introduces health problems. So many things are there. So the fourth dimension of yoga, which I very strongly believe, which flows out of the third dimension, is so beautifully and slowly and firmly, we seem to develop a certain understanding of how do we handle the world of action. Let me give a few ideas from Gita, because to me, Karma Yoga is what? Karma Yoga says that every one of us is part of a situation. Maybe as I told you, as a member of an organization, a member of a family, a member of a society, whichever it may be. I am a part of a situation. The situation demands a certain response from me. I must put my best foot forward. I must respond. That's the central theme in Gita. I must put the best foot forward. And finally, I think I should have the grace to take results as it comes, rather than tying myself too closely to the results and creating a lot of problems for myself. This has been so beautifully described in so many chapters in great detail in Gita. That's precisely what I mean by that dimension of yoga. There are beautiful concepts. There is a concept called titiksha. It says matra sparshast kaunteya sitoshna sukha dukkataha agama paino anityaha tam titiksha svabharata. Krishna says life is a roller coaster ride. The life will blow hot and cold. Sukha and dukkha, success and failure. In fact, one can write a dictionary of duality. I like, I don't like, positive, negative, up, down, success, failure, you're cold and hot. Like that, you can keep on saying the world is full of dualities. And Krishna says, we will have to go through this. Unfortunately, today's educational system to a large extent is saying only good things can happen to you. All of us have to, become good. No, in a certain parameter, all of us cannot be good. All of us can be unique. All of us cannot be the same. Your strength is very different from my strength. My strength is different from somebody else's strength. We have to be good in our own ways. And to do that, we should be able to take the challenges of life as it comes, which Krishna talks about, what is called mental equipoise, titiksha. That's why he said, Yogastha karma kuru karmani sangam tyaktva dhananjaya siddha asiddhayoho samo bhutva samatvam yoga uchyate. He gives such a beautiful definition for yoga. He says, what is yoga? Yoga is samatva. Can you, take things as it happens in life? Sometimes it is good. Sometimes it is not good. Sometimes it is to our liking. Sometimes it is not to our liking. Sometimes we have put the best effort, but we didn't get the results. This is the reality of life. This is the charm of living. That's why Krishna says, samatvam yoga uchyate. What is yoga? Your ability to reach that mental equipoise. Your ability to discover samatva in what you do. With grace, you take results as they come, even when you put the best foot forward. That is called yoga. And that dimension of yoga is such a beautiful dimension that we all must go through. And that is called, that's why Krishna says, there are so many, I'll quote only a few. That's why Krishna says, tadartam karma kaunteya mukta sangha samachara. Engage in work. Engage in this world of work. We have to be in the thick of work. Mukta sangha samachara. Don't get too attached. I use the word detached attachment. That's the word I use. The way to succeed in life is to practice detached attachment. What does it mean? It means attached to the work. You have skills. Put your best foot forward. That is the attachment part. And what is the detached part of it? Results come. Results come very well. Wonderful. If results are not to the extent of the effort I put, that's okay. That is called detached attachment. And that is called karma yoga. So this journey of yoga, I believe, is very, very important for individual self-evolution. So therefore, I mean, I keep saying this quite often in many of my other lectures. I keep saying this. We have choice to lead our life. And what is the choice? You can be a karma yogi. All these that I talked about. Understand that, there is a way by which you can handle the world of activities. Then you become a karma yogi. I mean, results come, that's okay. But I will not be too much glued to what is in it for me and so on. I do have, of course, goals. I set goals, I work for the goals. The goals sometimes fructify, it doesn't fructify and so on. That's called karma yoga. Or if you say, I'll put the goals ahead of even before putting the first step. This is what modern management is teaching a lot of people. And that's why we are all in trouble. People start managing results. They don't do work. If you do work, you never get tired. If you start managing your results, you get tired very fast. Because results and the anxiety of not being able to get the results is what makes us tired. So instead of becoming a karma yogi, if you become so result oriented, we become a bogi and we become a rogi finally. So this is a path that is in front of us. And this is a beautiful dimension of yoga, which I cannot afford to miss, because to me, this is a very important dimension of yoga, which sets the foundation for self-evolution. In mathematics, even in basic calculus, we say, necessary condition and sufficient condition. I just take a very elementary calculus. If you say the first derivative is 0, dy by dx is equal to 0. You do not know whether it's a maxima or minima. It is only a necessary condition. It's not sufficient condition. Now you have to do a second derivative. When you do a second derivative and it becomes negative, then it is maxima. And this is what we learned in our 10th, 11th standard calculus. Or if the second derivative is positive, we call it as minima. So you need a necessary and a sufficient. In the same way, self-evolution, liberating ourselves, discovering our full true potential, which is the core theme of all Indian scriptures, including the yoga. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, if you wish, or any other yoga text that you want to take, there are two conditions. One is a necessary condition, another is a sufficient condition. And what is the necessary condition? Chitta Shuddhi. The first important condition for self-evolution is my mind should be very pure. And that Chitta Shuddhi will come through Karma Yoga. This approach to work, this approach to understand life and its multitude of activities which are thrown at me by the moment will bring a lot of purity of the mind. That person will become a lot more composed. So Shankaracharya in his magnum opus, Viveka Chudamani, there is a beautiful shloka. He says, Karmaha chitta shuddhyarte, na vastu upalabhyate. He says, you do work, you engage in pure work for what? Not to get liberated. He says, chitta shuddhyarte. The necessary condition is first you should be devoid of a lot of, tainted mind. Purity of mind is very important for self-evolution. That comes through this fourth stage of yoga that I'm talking about. So to me, this is a very important journey, a journey in which I handle the world. I handle the world in such a way that I get a good sleep every day. We all work for that. We all work for a good sleep every day. And we all work for the last sleep, which has to be the most peaceful. That's the goal of our life. And this practice of yoga takes us there. I call it as the art of dying. The last sleep must be peaceful. And whether we like it or not, every one of us work towards it. Some of us think that we become very peaceful only when we get a promotion. Some of us think that we will get very peaceful only when we get more salary. And we may have our own assumptions about it, and we will check our assumptions. That's why we have been given a journey called life. But all of us actually go towards a single goal, and that is the last sleep must be peaceful. And let me tell you, this dimension of yoga is a great step towards that. It will make things a lot more peaceful for us. Therefore, I think this is a very important journey in self-evolution. So this is the fourth dimension. So let me go to the fifth dimension of yoga. And clearly, as we see here, what started as a simple idea of physical fitness and stretching that a little bit more and say, no, let us address health conditions, job stress and burnout and so on, which is a little more sophisticated understanding of the physical dimensions of yoga. From there, we moved on into the world inside. We said, no, there is a world inside. I am a unique individual. I have a unique space. Let me try to gather it. And through that experience of that small little experiences that I gathered in that process, I also learned how to handle the world outside. That is the fourth dimension that we talk about. All these very logically will lead to the fifth dimension of yoga, which I call it as yoga as a journey for self-evolution. This thought gets stronger in people's mind. All these experiences will only make this a little stronger in our mind, that yoga is indeed a journey for self-evolution. What is this? I can't get into too many details on this, but I will use this word. In our scriptures, there is a word very often used called yukta. There are words, in Bhagavad Gita also it is used. In Taittiriya Upanishad, let me just quote this. Sometimes then, we understand what we are talking. Taittiriya Upanishad, in the first chapter of Taittiriya Upanishad, there is a convocation address. The last section, the 11th, 10th and the 11th Anuvaka of the Taittiriya Upanishad is all about convocation address. as the students pass out of the Gurukula, the teacher wants to give a few sort of ideas, advices, not ideas exactly, some important advices in life. Because please understand, and it holds good even today. You know, when I teach management here in IIM Bangalore, as much as you teach your neuro courses and so on, a classroom setting is very ideal. You know, we look at this, how strange the way we do things. So I offer a course and I'm expected to give a very detailed course outline. And the course outline, everything is said. What is expected of it? What is expected of, what are all the topics that will be covered? How would it look like? How you'll be evaluated? I smile at my students and say, this is what will happen, never happen in your life. You step out of your campus, nothing you will know. Nothing is given, and whatever is given may not be even true. So, you know, so when people step out of a learning atmosphere, they should be told that life is a little different, my dear friend, than what you saw in this such a beautiful campus. Same thing that Guru did in Taittiriya Upanishad. So towards the end of that convocation address, Guru says, you will face a lot of things in life. All that we taught will not be directly applicable, actually. And you will have a lot of dilemma. How do you handle it? How do you handle it? There are no hard and fast rules. So how do you understand it? That time there is a nice mantra. I will just say what that mantra is. He says, Ye tatra brahmana sammarshinaha yukta ayukta aluksha dharma kamasyuhu yatate tatra varteran tata tatra varteta. He says there are people who are yuktas. He uses the word yukta. Aluksha dharma kamasyuhu. People who have such a beautiful understanding of dharma. They don't get easily, they are not unwavering in their understanding of dharma. And yatate tattara varteran. See how they approach solving a problem. Go and solve a problem like that. Because sometimes your book and your scriptures will not give you direct answers. So the word yukta is used there. In Bhagavad Gita, yukta and ayukta is used in several places. At least some 6-7 references are there, I think. For example, there is one nice shloka in chapter 2. It says, Nasti buddhi ayuktasya, nacha ayuktasya bhavana, na abhavayataha shantihi, ashantasya kutasukam. Krishna asks a question. How will you get sukha? If you are an ayukta, see, uses the word ayukta there. He uses yukta also in several other places. Here there is a word ayukta. He says, if you are an ayukta, you will have no buddhi. Nasti buddhi ayuktasya. Which means your power of discrimination will go. Buddhi has the power to discriminate from what is right and what is wrong. What is permanent and what is perishable. What is nitya and what is anitya. Nitya anitya vastu vichara. That is the primary function of buddhi. So he says, ayukta nasti buddhi ayuktasya. Nacha ayuktasya bhavana. These fellows who are called ayuktas, they don't have the bhavana. They don't bring the right attitude to life. They cannot bring the right attitude to life. Then he says, abhavayataha kutas shantihi. A person who doesn't have the right attitude to life, how will he have shanti in life? He will not have shanti in life. Ashantasya kutas sukham. A fellow who doesn't have shanti, what are you talking about sukha? Sukha is not his cup of tea. So this self-evolution eventually takes us to this concept called yukta. Now this word yukta is very interesting. The word yoga is also interesting. The word yoga, yukta, all these come from a Sanskrit root. Yunj, you is the dhatu. So you means to connect. That's why in engineering, when I was doing my mechanical engineering, we use the word called yoke. When two compartments are connected in a train, it is connected with a coupling and there is something called yoke. The yoke will be something like this. This is how it will connect. There will be one sort of a ring kind of a thing, another sort of ring, and both of them are. So this is called yoke. So yoke has also come from yoga, from you. So yoga or yukta. So what is yoga now? Yoga is to get connected. Connected with what? Yoga or a yukta, the word yukta which I have been using, a yukta is one who is connected with his or her quintessential nature. Each one of us have a very unique, the so-called I. The I resides somewhere. So are we connected to that or are we distanced from that? Yoga helps you to connect. That's why it's called yoga. That's why it's called a yukta. One who is connected to the quintessential nature, one he is connected to the ultimate, truth, which governs all of us. So he is a yukta. And this journey of yoga, which is a culmination of the previous 4 dimensions that we talk about, is a mechanism in which this individual starts understanding while he or she is part of the world. Because the previous dimensions have taught all those beautiful ideas. This person can be reasonably healthy, can keep his physical fitness, can gather himself, find time for himself, understand his world inside uniquely, can handle the activities as part of the world. Such a person will slowly understand the meaning of yukta. The journey becomes a lot more internal. The journey becomes something in which it is a little inward turned, little more of meditation, a little more of all that we have learned with the japas and a little bit of concentration and all that breath control, all that come into play. And, while we may be trying to do so many things, essentially we are heading towards a possibility of getting connected to our own quintessential nature. So this is the 5th dimension of yoga that I actually wanted to talk, which is clearly, and so as you see, all these are evolutions in this journey, in this highway called yoga. And that takes us eventually to all that we see in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra. These beautiful ashtangas. You have the yamas, the niyamas, the asana, the pranayama, the pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So the last, if you ask me, the last dimension in that is to truly experience and live through the ashtangas. I mean, there's a lot of ideas about yama. If you look at Yoga Sutra, you could understand it so well. There are yamas, there are niyamas. After yamas and niyamas comes asana. See, we have now jump-started directly to asana, which is fine. Maybe a little easier for us to, it looks like a low-hanging fruit, so one can pluck it. But that's not what it is. That thought will slowly engulf us. Life is one of yamas and niyamas. That brings the chitta shuddhi. That brings a bit of purity of thought, purity of mind, a certain alignment of thought and mind and action. All that so nicely happens. So yama, niyama, asana, pranayama, there is this exercise of gathering oneself and the breathing control. Breathing control brings a lot of consciousness drawn inside. If you close our eyes and if you are able to do pranayama, it actually elevates us to a different level of consciousness. That discovering that unique space that I am talking about. So all these Ashtanga, this Bahiranga sadhana of first 5 steps, which long practices of that and so on, and the Antaranga Prayoga, which are the last 3 steps. It's not that I'm saying we have all reached there, but I think we understand the value of this journey and we invest in that. So this is, in a way, if you ask me, this is how I would possibly, so in a way to summarize, I would say, to me it appears yoga has 6 dimensions. And the first dimension is what I call it is beginning stage. And what do we understand yoga in a beginning stage? We focus on physical elements and aspects of one's life, which is fine. I think that is a way we have to also understand things. Everything is a journey for us. So the beginning stage is to think that yoga is all about stretching us, keeping us nimble, keeping us very flexible and all that, which is fine. So that's the beginning stage. The second stage is what I call this intermediate stage, And there, the focus of yoga is the focus into the world inside, leading eventually to Chitta Shuddhi. I think we will experience it. We don't have to read here and there. I think we should be convinced of such a possibility. We put the right steps to the, the great ideas of karma yoga that we find, and this meditation and all that. Slowly, when you start gathering ourselves, we get into what I called as an intermediate stage where we focus on the world inside. And of course, then of course comes the advanced stage, getting onto the highway of spirituality, self-evolution and liberation. Because whatever scriptures you read, whether you do Sankhya Darshana, or whether you read, Yoga Sutras, or you read Mimamsa, or you read our Vedic corpus, or Upanishads, or, whatever. Even if you read Aryabhatiya, he will say that the goal of life is to liberate. Vayam sarve amritasya putraha. Shvetashvara Upanishad says, we are all children of divinity. There's unlimited potential in us. And I think, which are all roads, Ano Bhadraha Sarve Yantu Kratavo Vishwataha. I think all roads lead only there. Yoga is one such path. And whichever way we start in yoga, even in yoga, we can take different paths. But finally, I think the destination, the same for us. It's all about discovering our true potential, feeling that having that sense of contentment and having a sleep which is peaceful every day. I think that's the ultimate goal of yoga. And I am sure every one of us will find our own ways of these 6 dimensions in its own pace, but we will all reach there. And that's what I feel the experience of yoga that we all must aspire for. I think with these few words, I would just leave it here. Thank you for this opportunity. And maybe if there are a few points to discuss, it will be my pleasure. To the extent possible, I can, share my views and ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving a wonderful exposition of the personal evolution through this yoga path, starting from the notion of yoga from at the most physical level, going up to the higher mental and higher level. So we'll open the house for the questions or the discussion. So if there are any questions, you can please put it in the chat box. So, or you can raise the hand and you can unmute and ask the questions directly. Okay, so by the time we get say certain questions in the chat box, or we see the
Nagendra has raised. You have raised the hand. What is that? Nagendra has raised the hand.
No, I am not Nagendra from SVYasa, sir. First of all. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, but I am a student of SVYasa. I have completed my MSc and I am working in Tezpur Central University now as a yoga assistant professor. So my question is, sir, like you quoted the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita in the very beginning says that you are the soul. You are not this body to Arjuna. So don't worry about the body. Like when you are not killing somebody, or because the soul cannot be killed. Okay. So that's important concept that the Bhagavad Gita provides. The second is, later on Bhagavad Gita says to Arjuna that these people have already been killed. It's only an opportunity to you. You are just an instrument. I have already done the work. I've just selected you as an instrument. So that means the concept of ego that we are doing is also not there, which Bhagavad Gita says. So in that context, I would like to know how important is the concept of soul and the ego in yoga. What's your opinion, sir, in that respect?
Yeah. Please, first of all, I was giving this example that if you want to go to Mount Everest, then the journey involves going through several base camps. So
Yeah, yeah.
the rule is no different here also. See, I'll give you another example. You know, before you do your complex calculus and complex number crunching and mathematics and so on, what is important is to tell the 5-year-old child that 5 plus 3 is nothing but 5 in the mind, 3 in the hands, and after 5, 6, 7, 8. But you don't do it when you are doing your PhD. You have to actually undo, you have to learn something and you have to undo that learning, because these different things that are being talked about are different facets to develop a larger understanding of the ultimate goal. Therefore, the idea of ahankar, the idea of nimitta matram, bhavasavya sachin, the idea of you are not the body, you are the soul, are the facets of different ways by which you try to somehow get on to that idea of ultimately what we need to reach, which is discovering our full potential. Therefore, I think all these are at different levels of reality. And it all depends on to what level of reality we have transcended. To that extent, some concepts are there, some concepts are conflicting with one another. Please understand, hydrogen is highly compressible, oxygen is highly compressible. But if you put 2 molecules of hydrogen and 1 molecule of oxygen, it will actually put down combustion. So Viruddha Swabhava can happen at different stages of evolution also. So all those are very large concepts. So I think we should take a much larger view of the ideas and go forward in many of these concepts.
Thank you, sir. I suppose you mean that practically infused means philosophy infused with practicality.
Yes, yes.
Thank you.
It is the
Thank you,
practice. It is the practice which takes you to liberation. Philosophy can only give you some clues of what we need to do.
Right, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
So there is a question in chat box. Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen the question. I think the question is how to apply concept of karma yoga while keeping spirit of competitive and accomplishments based mindset.
Yeah.
It's a very common question. Now, the very question starts to give an impression that karma yoga is an antithesis to accomplishment. So that's where the question starts. Because you are saying, how do you do this while doing this? I am not saying you have to. In fact, you can be very competitive in you can try to be very competitive in your life, but you can achieve that competitive thing only with the tool called karma yoga. So it is not this or that. I want to make this very clear that by no stretch of imagination, karma yoga means you don't set goals. By no stretch of imagination, the karma yoga doesn't tell you have goals, stretch goals. Please have all of them. Karma yoga simply says when things are not happening the way you are, when you didn't expect, what are you going to do? Are you going to land yourself into a psychological mess and then get treated from Dr. Nagendra or somebody for that? Or are you going to keep afloat and then understand, life is like, so karma yoga is not about setting goals. Karma yoga is not about putting efforts. Karma yoga is about saying, how do you handle when results come? When results don't come, just because you put efforts, you cannot thumb the desk and say results have to come. That's a very childish behavior. I will tell you, I want to cross this campus, cross to the other side of the road and catch a bus and go to the 3 bus stops from here. I keep telling my students there are 20 possibilities in which I will not be able to accomplish even this simple task. I may not cross sometimes. I will cross, the bus driver we may decide not even stop the bus, or he stops the bus before I board, he goes. Even simple things happen in such a way that results are not in our hands. Karma yoga bothers only about how do you handle results. It is not bothered about whether you are competitive, whether you want to accomplish, how much you want to accomplish. All that is all your choices. So while handling it, you can use karma yoga. So it is not this or that.
continuation of the same, say, question. So, what is the, say, practical hint that you would offer to develop this, an attribute of a karma yoga in day-to-day life?
I think a very practical hint is a belief in such a thing that is possible. See, mind, sir, you know, I don't have to tell you, if somebody gets married, until that Mangal Sutra is tied, this person does not think she is the wife. That person does not think he is the husband. But after marriage is over, they don't go through an orientation program. There's an acceptance of the mind. You are my husband and I am my wife. Mind is so powerful. So the practical hint is we have to tell our mind that the best way to succeed in life is karma yoga and understand the notions of karma yoga. I think it is all mind. Acceptance of the mind makes all the difference in everything that we do in life. That's the most practical thing. So we need to coach our mind. We need to repeatedly coach our mind that this is the only way we can succeed. In fact, it's the most practical way I see it happening.
So are there any other questions? People can raise their hand. So there is one a question from Ishwant Mule.
Yes.
Yeah. Samatha and Vipassana is, sir, what you tell again and again. I think Mr. Mule, you can unmute and ask the question directly. Mr. Mule?
He's still not unmuted. Yeah, I do not exactly understand what he has asked, but maybe he talks about samatva. I do not know what exactly is.
Or maybe Mr. Mule can reframe his questions and put it in the chat box.
Yes.
I feel he is thinking you are talking about samatva. Is that the same as Kshamata and Vipassana in Buddhism also?
No, okay. So, sir, samatva is, if I have to use the nearest English word for it, samatva is about mental equanimity. I can use the word equanimity. Samatva is about a state of mind and developing a sense of acceptance of events, whether it is adversarial or whether it is conducive. See what happens. I mean, this is a simple psychology we all have. I keep seeing it also. You know, there is this first ranker in, let us say, JEE or state first and so on. And this young boy or the girl says, and not only him, it is only an example I have taken. Even all of us have this problem. When success happens, we say it is because of me. I put hard work. I did this, I did that, and so on. I mean, occasionally we may say parents and all that, but by and large, the tone of the whole discussion you will find is when success comes, I own it completely. When failure happens, we blame everybody, including the God. It goes up to that level. The God has also schemed against me. Poor Ganapati did not get 11 coconuts. So we go up to that level. So this attitude of ability to take when good things happen to us and unable to take adversarial things that happens to us is to be somehow eliminated. And that ability to do that is called samatva. Can you take things a little, equally as we see in
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, equipoise, equanimity, balanced mind, samatha, all these things are actually synonyms, I feel.
Yeah,
And,
so I was coming to it.
so,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I feel that what you are telling is ultimate aim of Vipassana. Futtassa loka dhamme chitta yasana tourism khemam etam mangalam uttamam. So that also tells you the same thing, that you have to be equanimous, equipoised, balanced in any, as you tell, there are many twins. Yeah, yash, apyash, labh, the
I was coming
honey.
to
So
that.
all
Although
those things, you
there
remain.
are slight differences in the approach, but you are right. Finally, they are all kshamata is in a way an ability to develop samatva. I can put it that way. Yeah, kshamata is a skill which leads you to samatva. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
So any other questions? So if not, then I think we can really wind up today's session. So, sir, on behalf of Center for, so there's one more. Okay, nothing. So, okay. So it just okay. So everybody are appreciating the talk. That's the message that we are getting. So, sir has given a wonderful exposition about the journey of yoga, that one needs to keep it in mind in our life. But how is that yoga can really unfold the deeper dimensions in us, and ultimately leading to a very happy and contentful and fulfilling life. So with these few words, we are extremely happy and very honored that Dr. Mahadevanji has accepted our invitation, and he has given his time to us. And despite he was not feeling well when I called him, but despite his little bit of ill health, so he has given his time for us. Sir, we are very, very, very thankful, and we are very obliged for your time and your valuable wisdom that you have given on this occasion.
Thank you, Dr. Nagendra. It was a pleasure to be with all of you. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And so in continuation, so we'll be having our final webinar series will be on the day after tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Again, see in a different dimension of Karma Yoga, where Dr. Balasubramanian will be sharing his experiences with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And I thank all of you for your wonderful participation. Thank you.